I'm Luke. I'm the one with all the things, all the items which were on show earlier. So for the first part of our Q&A, I would like to invite Leavon Archer, Iain Simons, and Gavin Rummery. Hello. So to start with, this section is going to focus on what Lara has meant to the industry and to the local industry itself. So firstly, you've got to start with Gavin, who got an honourable mention by Iain Livingston. You were there at the start of Core. You headed it towards the end. At that initial start, did you ever think that this game would have the impact it's had?
No.
Thank you. Next. Elaborate, please.
When we were first making it, obviously, everyone hopes their game's going to be a success. So obviously, we were, like every team that's ever made a game ever, you were hoping it was going to be a success. But when I first arrived and first started working on it, I didn't think we were even going to make it, because Toby described this game that sounded so ridiculous compared with what you saw in the game shops at the time. It was so advanced because he was an animator and he was so into the idea of building this, thing that was like a movie. And so he described this incredible game to me on the first day, and I just thought, oh my God, wow, this just can't be happening. This must be an amazing team I'm going to be working with. I went into this room and there were just 4 people in there, including Heather down there, and Toby and Paul and Jason Gosling, I think, was there. Anyway, and it was just like talking to them, and they'd no, I haven't really worked on a 3D game, and no, I've not done this. So I was really not confident that we were going to manage to do it. But as time went by and we started putting this together, and things started to happen on the screen, you could tell it was coming together. You could tell it was, a good game. But it wasn't really until it properly came out and we started seeing the sales figures and we started getting all the kind of interest that you thought, no, we've done something special here. We've done something that's... But even then, would I have expected 20 years later to be sitting here? No, not even then, I don't think. Because games, they do well for a few years and then they disappear. There's plenty of franchises that disappeared off the face of the earth. So the fact that Lara's kept... I think it is Lara, apart from anything. I think it's Lara that's what's kept it going. She's like a James Bond, she's kept the whole thing going. I think games could be rubbish now and they'd go, oh, never mind, maybe the next one will be good, just like a James Bond movie.
I suppose that's one of the main things, because she was such an icon in terms of advertisements, and it extended more than the games to movies and things like that. So it wasn't just a video game which came out and just disappeared, for that console. It actually continued, and then you continue to make them, and more. So for you then, so you stayed the whole duration. Like, what to you was the biggest change? Obviously, the team grew.
The change, it's basically the team growing was probably the biggest thing. For the first 5 iterations, the team grew a little bit. There was a bit of a change after Tomb Raider 2 to a sort of different team. But the games they were all built on the same engine, so they were getting more advanced, but they were fundamentally all there on PlayStation 1. The big change was the switch to Angel of Darkness, where it was just a clean start. At that point, that was the biggest team that that Core Design had ever had. And it was much, much bigger. And up till then, Core had been a very sort of... Well, we all liked... those of us who were there all loved it, because we didn't have much interference from management. We just made games. And the teams didn't have any kind of hierarchy to them. They just did what they did. But all of a sudden, with the 40-man team, which was huge for Core at the time, that didn't work anymore. And it took management a long time to realise that they couldn't just get away with the team sort of self-organising itself. And there was enough different factions. The ideas were... The ambition was much bigger than the time available, and so on and so forth. So suddenly, and obviously nowadays with big games with 200, 300, 400 people on them, it needs a ton of organisation because it's such a complex thing. So that was the big change, was the switch to Angel of Darkness. It suddenly became... Core wasn't quite ready for it. at that point. Obviously, it was our undoing, I suppose.
How ominous. So we'll move on to Iain, who, if you don't know, is the director of Game City and Nottingham's NVA, which is the National Video Game Arcade. Being from Nottingham, and after hearing, or living in Nottingham, you work in Nottingham, your National Video Game Arcade is in Nottingham, how do you feel that Lara is Derby's girl, I suppose?
I hadn't really thought of her as in quite those divisive, threatening terms until you said it now. So now I feel a bit nervous. I think what. So about a decade ago, when Iain Media, who were the screen agency at the time, I think they might have done bits of funding with Circle at the time, actually, like post the core stuff, were looking for an identity for the region. I can't think of any other region in the country ever, or actually possibly the world, with the exception of Japan and those kind of IPs, that's had something that's been that powerful, that's been anchored to a place. And it's weird actually. You start to think about so I spend a lot of time like banging on about the cultural, or the absence of the kind of cultural confidence of games, and I don't mean that from a desperately pretentious cultural studies point of view, but from a like being proud of what they are, being proud as an industry in the same way that people are proud of other industries, and and it was happening here, and it was happening in the British Midlands for that for that period. I mean, it's only really like after the event, I think, that people, from my perspective, I think people really started to kind of shout about it at the level it needed to be. It was, the impact of Lara was like it's like you try and think of something that famous now. You try and like think back at just how massive Lara was at that time. And maybe we'll talk about it in a bit. But it was a shame it took so long for the creative industry sort of Illuminati. Is that a white say? To acknowledge like just what a contribution the core team made. To name a road after her. Can you imagine?
A whole road.
Nottingham had Torval and Dean Close, I think it was. I mean, that is frankly not as
our appreciation for Lara extends to a road. So with that, so you talk about like the impact on the local industry, so that sort of brings me on to my question for Leavon. No pressure. You're a Derby games designer. You've taught game design. You've probably worked for most of the local developers which are known, apart from Core. Would that be fair?
I didn't actually work for Core. No.
Not Core.
No. What am I doing here?
How you worked on Medieval and James Pond? Yeah, that's a good game. So, how have you seen sort of Lara's impact on the local industry? So you've worked in it from other perspectives. Like for you, this game comes out, you're local as well. Like, what did you think?
Well, it was interesting because I actually wasn't in Derby when it came out. I'm afraid. I got into games in about '91, I think. I started a little studio just in Ripley, not far down the road, and there were three of us above a garage making James Bond games. And I think it was around the time of sort of when PlayStation 1 was sort of about to come out, we realised that we were little fish in a very big pond and we couldn't afford the sort of dev kits for PS1. And so around that time I had a look around what my options were sort of locally, and it's weird, but at that point I hadn't really seen Core making that leap to 3D. I'd seen they'd done a few 2D games, and I moved to Sony in Cambridge, where I learned 3D down there, and worked on medieval games when I lived in Cambridge. And it was only when I moved back to Derby, probably about 97, 98, something like that, and I moved to Eurocom. So I was sort of the opposite side of the street then as well, and you realise that that had a huge impact on that company and really turned them into a big player. And I'm not sure why, I don't know, I never really considered picking up the phone and calling Core, because I really should have done at the time. If I probably regret not calling Core, instead of going to Sony, I should have called Core and tried to get a job there.
I suppose, leading from that, is that with a hindsight to seeing how much of an icon it's become though?
Yeah,
Because,
absolutely.
You know, if let's just say, you know, James Bond continued to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
You
We could be sat here talking about James Bond. Right?
exactly 20 years of James Bond, even longer. But, that's sort of,
going to happen.
no. But that sort of comes back to it because sort of Gavin, you joined. Was it about the time that this was before the game had come out? So you were sort of at the start of that process for Tomb Raider. Looking back at it, core beforehand, was what sort of drew you to it then?
What drew me to core? They
Yeah.
offered me a job.
Usually, mate.
But yeah, no, I mean, actually at that time, I think core didn't have that great a reputation, to be honest. It was kind of, they've done a lot of smallish games, but, you know, they kind of had a mixed reputation, I think, at that time. But I was coming out of university and I sent off a CV to a few places, and core were the ones, and when I came to see it, they were by far the friendliest company. Whereas I went to, say, Gremlin up in Sheffield, and they were talking about, oh yeah, you know, for the first 6 months you sit there and do high score tables. I was like, oh great, that's not what I want to be doing. So core just seemed a very friendly company, and that was what drew me to them.
That's very good. And Iain, so with the National Video Game Arcade, you're very much up to date on the culture of video games. That's really what it's about, the culture. Would you say that Tomb Raider as a game itself, do you think the progression of the games now has gotten better? So now, I know it's a weird way I asked that question. So in terms of what, as the character has progressed, so Lara, you know, we have to admit, was quite sexualised at the start, was assumed to be. Do you think that's gotten better now? This is a new one though, so she's not.
Are you asking me a question about whether I think Lara's more or less sexualised?
Yes.
I want to make sure I'm answering the right question.
Yes,
I'm qualified to answer
yes,
it.
that is the question.
Like, honestly, I don't know how to answer that. Like I was doing a BBC. There's been a lot of 20th anniversary Tomb Raider, and a lot of people answer the question: well, did her breasts get progressively bigger over the first 2 iterations? Why do you think about that? And like, you know, yeah, probably, and to some extent, depending on which hat you have on, like that's probably like maybe that's possibly a problem. But then I don't think, like, you look at all advertising ever for anything in, you know, Western capitalism, and it's pretty sexualized. And then Lara was more than a piece of advertising, like obviously, right? But the problem that like Lara had and the core had, or Eidos had perhaps more, was that she was massive. I mean, this is at the same time, like, you complain about Lara being sexualized, this is at the same time as the Spice Girls. Do you know what I mean? Like, this was the same period, we got the Tories out, and this new name called Britannia, and the Spice Girls, and Lara's Aid, and like, you forget, it's 20 years ago, and you sort of forget like quite what momentum that was at the time. Like, Douglas Coupland was writing books about Lara Croft, you know? Like, soft drinks are being renamed after it. This was like the momentum and weight behind Lara at that time. Like, there's been nothing like it. Like, for any kind of image representing the games, it's taken 15 years for Sackboy to turn up and now be the thing that people put on, you know, the sort of poster child for British games. You'll notice I've ducked your question about whether I think that.
Which is fine.
Only because I don't know how to answer it. It's like, you know, it's like trying to measure the sexual politics of like a 70s sitcom against what we wrote down, and it's just not fair.
I mean, leading on from what you just said, I found the same, because for this event, lots of people have asked me that question. They've gone, "Did you think that the character was sexualised?" And I was like, I was 5 and 6 at the time. So to answer your question, no. And I've never been able to see it in that way because I grew up with it. And like, for some of you may have heard this, but for me, my school was on Ashbourne Road. We used to walk past Core Design, and my mum would go, "That's where Lara lives." And to a young boy, you have no idea you're there, because it just doesn't look as grand as what's portrayed in the games. And you know, and it's more of a family thing. We used to play the games with my dad. He would play. Well, we'd hinder him. And, you know, we'd say, "Dad, go up there," and he'd probably die. But that's what it was for me. She never was this sort of. I've never been able to see it, I suppose. But then I suppose that leads on to Gavin. answering the question, like, do you think she was sexualised?
Yeah, she was by IOS, yeah. I mean, I think that was the thing that we talked about when those of us who were on the project originally, we didn't think of it like that. You know, she was this character in this game and she ran around reading tunes. Yes, she was made out in a kind of fairly sexy way, but, you know, it's just the same as every male character. It's always butch and manly and all the rest of it. You know, that's just the way it is. But it was really IOS marketing who latched onto the fact that this was a big deal, this character, and they put it on the front of the box, you know, starring Lara Croft or introducing Lara Croft, whatever they put. At the time, we were like, well, that's a bit strange because no one's ever heard of this character. It's only just come out. But they'd obviously seen that this was going to be a big deal, and then they pushed it like crazy. And then when we were making Tomb Raider 2, that's when it all went, you know, huge. The Face, which was a big magazine at the time, stuck her on the front, which was totally weird, a computer game character on the front of this magazine. And then Coresight kind of churning out, and it was a bit weird during Tomb Raider 2, sort of images of her in her swimsuit and things like that, which didn't fit the game character at all. And I certainly had conversations at the time with people who didn't play the game, who thought, oh, you work on that kind of porny game. It's like, no, it's not like that, you know. Because they just took this, all they saw was the media thing. And as you say, every kind of interview we had at that time, it was always, if they were outside the games industry, they were straight all over that side of it, you know, about Lara and as a sort of, you know, woman rather than an actual character in a game. So, yeah, what am I saying? I'm not sure what I'm answering your question at all.
I think you've answered the question, which is good. Trying to think what else. Watch. 3 minutes. That's good. So we'll go back to you then, Leavon. For you, because you've taught game design at Derby Uni. How important is the older games to that then? Because with something like Tomb Raider, it is iconic, and I suppose that's what your students would have aspired to go for. So what is the importance of looking back at the older stuff which was made and then going, well, this happened? Is there an importance there?
I don't know. I think there was one point in teaching where they asked if we could introduce a history element to the modules we were doing, and I didn't really see the relevance, to be honest. You're teaching, at the end of the day, you're teaching kind of skills, you're teaching anatomy, and my particular module was purely art-based. And so for me, I wanted to be able to, sort of teach kids how to make games that are, graphics that look current, and so therefore learning the current skills. I guess covering a little bit of what we were doing back in the day. You do that a little bit. You talk about perhaps how you did things back then, but now it was more about trying to cram in a lot of information as to how we make games now. And I think with the new sort of the rise of the Tomb Raider, I've been playing it recently on the PS4, and the graphics and that, just stunning. They've really, and going back to the sexualization thing, I was always quite uncomfortable actually with the way she looked. I think where they're at now is actually a better place, I think, in terms of being a role model type character, and also a little bit more realistic in terms of the type of clothes she's wearing in Arctic environments. Instead of running around in a little vest top, she's actually wearing sort of a parka and things like that. Dressing up and a bit sensible, I guess.
Would you agree, Gavin?
I think it's true, but obviously Lara is also a product of the actual technology we had at the time, and Toby designed her, and that outfit was very much based around the fact because she was made out of separate parts. We didn't even do skinning back then, so she's kind of
polish for a park.
Yeah, but anyway, so he designed her her outfit and stuff. She had the little backpack that she wears. It would just cover the seams at her shoulders and things like that. Still, and it was kind of the in outfit at that sort of time. Girls were wearing kind of shorts. They kind of came back in again recently, but that was kind of very in. People talk about Spice Girls. That was the kind of thing they were wearing at the time. So she was definitely a product of her time.
And we'll go to Iain. Similar sort of question then. So for you, looking back, because you set up the National Video Game Arcade, there's obviously you appreciate the industry as a whole, as everyone here does. What is the importance of looking back and rather just going, games have gotten so great now, is that sort of relative? Should we look back?
Yeah, I mean, you don't know where you are unless, like, you know where you've been, right? And I think, there's a sort of culture on that, and there's I think from a design point of view, the progression of what, like, just the game did from a design point of view, of just beginning to nudge at, like, bigger three-dimensional worlds that could be explored, and a feeling of, like, freedom of doing that was something that Tomb Raider was really good. It felt really new, I think, for a mainstream sort of audience. And, like, the thing, we have a lot of school trips come to the NBA, and the thing that upsets all the kids is how difficult games certainly like in the 80s, but actually like Tomb Raider 1, I think at least, it's really hard. Like it's like Manic Miner level of accuracy in some of the platforming stuff. I didn't feel like that at the time though. No. Remember the time it was bad. I went back to play it like because it was coming here, and it's really difficult, the opening stuff. Not in a flawed way at all, but you couldn't, like, we have kids come to the NBA and play Tomb Raider, play like level 1 of Donkey Kong, stuff like that, and they can't, I mean, not in tears, but they would be if they weren't, seeing that balancing of difficulty change over the years. I mean, it's lots of things change, but that's a thing that you can really notice. You really get a sense of the sort of arc of that, So yeah, I think it's really important to look at the kind of the journey of this stuff, and that's not about just the graphics getting better. That's in some respects for me that's like the least interesting thing really. There's a whole load of other stuff that's happening around it too.
Okay, thank you, the three of you. That was very good. So yeah, that was interesting viewing. I would like to invite to the stage now Heather, Peter, Alex and Judith. A round of applause. Got to wake up. Cool, so the next bit I wanted to sort of look at what the 20th anniversary, just talk about it, we've had 20 years of Tomb Raider, we have some people here who've worked on different games, have different roles on them. I just want to sort of talk about some of the memories that I have. So I think the easiest thing to do is for everyone to introduce themselves and what games they've worked on.
Hi everyone, I'm Judith Gibbins and I voiced Tomb 2 and 3.
Hello everyone, my name's Heather Stevens and I was a level designer on Tomb Raider 1 and 2.
Hi, my name's Peter Barnard. I was a cinematic artist, so basically these storytelling sequences, and that was in Tomb Raiders 1 to 4.
Hi, my name's Alex Davis. I was a programmer on Tomb Raider 4, 5 and Angel of Darkness.
Excellent. So, I think the thing I want to ask first, because it is all about the anniversary, and you must all have very fond memories working on the games and voicing the character, as I think one of them said, a beautiful accent, Judith. So well done. So I think it's quite talk about maybe some I'd like what each of you to sort of your favourite moment, like something which really stands out, which you were happy when you were at core design. Not to put you on the spot.
That is to put me on the spot. With Tomb Raider, I think the best moments with Tomb Raider games, in all honesty, was finishing them. Getting them out of the door and getting them done. They were very interesting projects to work on, as most of them are, but we were under a huge amount of pressure to deliver large titles with all the commercial kind of aspects and things behind them, and we had to get them done, and we had very small time frames to get them done in. So ultimately, it was that feeling of like relief when you got it out of the door and it was out of the way.
Thank you, Peter.
Well, I think I have to echo a lot of what Alex says there. For sure, it was a very strict timelines, but I think once you'd adapted to that, you could enjoy the details. So I think some of the favourite bits for me was with the storytelling animations, starting from a storyboard and working with the team and getting the buy-in of what we're actually going to do. But then when it got to the stage where I involved Nathan with the music, and it suddenly
it added another dimension to what I was doing. And thinking, wow, this actually now feels quite real. And I think whenever we finished one, we felt brilliant. I know there's another 4 to do, and back to what Alex said, but that was really, really exciting moments for me.
I think the whole experience for me was fantastic. I agree with Alex. We had some great sort of game launch parties, didn't we, with IDOS and Core. But the better memories for me really was just the everyday working environment. It was very, very creative. It was nice to be with the buzz of creative people around you, and very inspiring. It drove you on, and the product that we were actually creating was a pleasure to work on as well. It was something I hadn't done before, so yeah, I would definitely say just the general day-to-day life of Core was good fun, and the work we did was fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, it's the team at Core were like a family really, and you know, they made me feel so welcome. After Shelley did the first voice, they made me feel so welcome. But a lot of the work, like they said, was very serious. It had to be out at a certain time, and you know, it's very fraught. But at the same time, I had really good fun with my outtakes. You know, even though it was all, you know, hard work and getting studio time in and doing all the voiceover work. But at the same time, we did have a laugh, and I did learn a lot, and I'm proud it was in my life, really.
I mean, very iconic voice you played, and some have said the best. So, which is an accolade, which is good to hang on to.
Thank you.
Do you find that when people meet you, I mean, people have met you today, is it strange that people are so sort of like overwhelmed, like seeing you and sort of speaking?
Yeah,
to
because I only did the 2 games, and of course it's come so far now. You've got, you know, Janelle and Keely and all the rest that did a lot more than me. I feel that they're sort of like Lara more than I was Lara, but then they'd say to me, no, but you were the second, and I don't know, it kind of makes me think a bit more about it, about what I actually did, whereas before it was kind of, even though at the time I wasn't allowed to tell anybody that I was actually doing the voice, so I was always hidden away in a cupboard or next to a microphone somewhere, and nobody kind of knew, so I didn't really express myself much then. It's more in later years that people have, you know, fans actually that have given me, you know, all these lovely comments and feedback from 20 years ago. So
I suppose it's the same for everyone here. When people find out that you've worked on a Tomb Raider, there must be that sort of like, oh, like, what was it like? Tell me more about it. Is it sort of similar feelings, sort of like a joy? I mean, there's a mic there next to you, Heather.
Unfortunately, I've got a 13-year-old at school who's just appreciating computer games now. And she name drops very occasionally. But I have said to her, you do know when you say Mum works on Tomb Raider, you're most likely going to get, yeah, right. You know, because kids just, especially a mum that works on Tomb Raider as well. No, I agree with what Judith was saying earlier. We were very much closeted and wrapped up at Core in what we were doing, and we certainly didn't get any opportunity to talk to fans. We weren't the face of the game. And it's really only over the last couple of weeks, in all honesty, from the Games Expo that my lovely friend over there, Ash, organised in Manchester, that we've just had the opportunity to address fans in 20 years. And say to people, you know, it's not about who we are, it's the fact that you appreciated what we did means a lot, really. And for people to come up to you and say, you know, either Tomb Raider changed my life, and you hear some really amazing, heartwarming stories, or it was just a good game to play, means a lot to me, because, and all the team really, because we didn't know how we were getting in touch with the general public. We had no concept that we'd arrived in somebody's living room and been part of their lives.
And with Peter, which is quite, because you work currently, we're all sort of in the industry in some ways, but with yourself, like when people, your other younger graphic designers ask you, like, oh, what are your credits, and you tell them Tomb Raider, are they again, is the awe with younger people, anyone in the industry really?
When I joined a company called Blitz Game Studios in Leamington, it was about 6 years ago. You had to introduce yourself by you fill in a form and it gets sent round to everyone to tell you who you are, and it's one of those cringe-worthy things. You have to write something embarrassing about yourself or games you've worked on. And I got a few emails, and it was interesting. It was a certain age group of people who said, "Oh, I was 8 or I was 12, and I can't believe you worked on that game." And it was one of those things where you just felt like, wow, that's amazing that you had this impact, or the game had this impact. And certainly, there's definitely a generational thing that people who grew up with something like that will have a stronger bond with it, I think, in adult life, which probably means that the brand will probably then resonate with another generation.
And continues to do so. And with you, Alex, I remember when we met before, I mean, it was a while ago, but I just thought it might be worth bringing up Core Design's Tomb Raider Anniversary. The game, yes, there's the mic. So, I don't know if many of you here know, but while we have Crystal Dynamics version of the Anniversary game, there was actually a Core Design Anniversary game in the works, and Alex will explain what happened.
The Anniversary project, I think, was always very speculative, because at the time it was, I think, it's going back quite a while now, but it was just after Eidos had sold Core to Rebellion. And the idea was that we would put together, using the assets and the systems that we already had, we put together a remake of the first game's Anniversary Edition, and kind of almost present it to Eidos as a fait accompli. It's like, check this out, look what we've done. Unfortunately, I think politically for them it was something they could never do. They just got rid of Core and, hey, check this game out, look what they've done. Oh no, well, we can't possibly release this. So I think the only reason people ever got wind of it was because the game got leaked. I don't know who leaked it, but it made it out and things. And at this point, Eidos then, well, effectively had to commission Crystal to do their own Anniversary Edition. So it was quite a weird one. We worked on a remake of the first game using up-to-date technology. It was really good. I mean, we were really pleased with what we'd done, and it was a lot more relaxed than a lot of the other Tomb Raider projects, because there was no pressure. It wasn't you've got to get this out in 2 months' time, otherwise the whole thing's going down. It's like that. Let's knock something together, play around with it a bit, make it look nice, make it control nice. And yeah, that was the story. It never got finished, never got released, unfortunately, which is a shame, because I know a lot of people really like the look of the videos. I think the version that Crystal did was very good, because Crystal are an extremely capable company. But yeah, it was something that it would have been nice to finish, but we never did.
And all, if you were interested in seeing footage of that, it's all on YouTube, very available, to see. Well, I suppose with being part of this 20th anniversary and being back in Derby, I mean, some of you are local or not, but is it weird that you're here now, there's this whole audience of people, and you're the celebrities, you're the other people that came to see you? Is it a bit of pressure?
I don't know about that. I mean, the thing is, with working on the games, for me, whatever game I worked on, it's always been, my whole thing is to do the best job I can, get it out of the door on time. That's always the kind of underlying thing, but that doesn't mean you're rushing it. You want to get it out the best quality you can, and do the best job you can working with the people around you in the time you have. So in a lot of respects, working on Tomb Raider, it was just another game. I mean, yeah, we knew it was huge, we knew it was iconic, and you do have a reasonable idea about how big it is, but you never, I can't remember, I've seen clips of the Leavon Loaded documentary. I've never seen it all the way through. I've never fancied sitting all the way through it. And you get an idea of just how huge it is. But when you're working on it, like I said, you are slightly cosseted to an extent. You're kept away from the public, largely because you've got some horrendous deadline to meet, and that's just going to kind of mess things up. But yeah, it's quite strange seeing the impact it's had and continues to have. I think we got a bit of a sense of it with some of the Lucasade advertising and things like that. That would be
Labrazade.
Yeah. A bit of cognitive dissonance. When you see one of those ads come up, hang on a second, this is just weird, so most of the time you tune it out, but yeah.
It's interesting bringing up the documentary, because I was going to ask Peter and Heather what they thought, because when you see those images, which they changed, does that, I imagine it upsets you, because that's what you worked on. But again, I saw when I was watching it, it's the scene which I absolutely hate that scene. It's just the one bit of documentary that really gets to me. But yeah, that's the scene, the rude scene.
Oh, right.
That
okay.
scene.
That doesn't bother me.
Vince and James. If they're here, hi.
It doesn't bother me. It
Shame on
doesn't
you.
have bothered me ever. And that's the really weird thing, because the people got very protective over Lara Croft. The thing is, I could understand where marketing went to a degree. That's something that's out of your control. You just have to look at marketing in general. If you're trying to sell sugar puffs, you end up with something like a honey monster to sell them. And if you look at how far removed advertising is from the actual product that they're selling, you've got to allow for that freedom within that industry. And I know it's something that upset Toby, as he mentioned in the film briefly. But for me, I concentrated more on the game itself. My life revolved around the game. Even Lara to a degree was a little out of reach for me because I was a level designer and more interested in the architecture of the game. And I can remember when it was released, people talking about Lara Croft and getting a bit sort of, no, you mean Tomb Raider? No, Lara Croft. No, it's Tomb Raider, it's a game, it's not a person. And I couldn't get my head around that for a long time. And certainly over the second and third Tomb Raiders, when we were getting interviewed, most of the interviews were geared towards Lara. And it was bizarre watching that documentary, the things like Gordonstone being involved and and some woman dressing up as Lara, and to me that all just seems so surreal, because when we worked on a game, the storyline at the time was secondary to the game. The game was about, let's pick some great locations. So you'd be watching a Sky documentary channel about a Chinese province and a great emperor that had a mystical tomb, which would drive a whole load of ideas then for exploration in the game. Or, the obvious ones, Egypt, let's do Greece. So the ideas for the levels came before the stories. The ideas of Lara and what she should do came before she had a history, before she had a story. So this was the stuff that was asked us towards the end of Tomb Raider 1 and was kind of bolted in. Let's get it in there. Let's give Lara a life. And to me, I could never get my head around that. And there's a lot of very early interviews with me, and some guy saying, so, what do you think of Lara? I'm like, she's just a game character. What do you think of her? She's not real. So I've never made that jump from people seeing her as a real character.
It's interesting you say that, because Judith earlier showed me some newspaper cuttings. Now, would you like to can you explain to everyone here what the particular one I'm on about is the comparison?
Yeah, they did, when it leaked out to the press, obviously, because I wasn't allowed to tell anybody who I was, as like even on the games it says many thanks, it doesn't actually say voice of Lara. But anyway, this particular newspaper article had Lara's vital statistics with her photograph and my vital statistics, what car she drove, what car I drove, etc., etc.
Etc. So and that was sort of after what you said, Heather, about Lara being that person. The fact that you had national papers sort of going, this is the real Lara. Like there's an expose.
The real. But obviously the people didn't want to look at me as the real Lara because I was nothing like that.
It's like big news for them. And I suppose again, Heather, when you were talking, it reminded me of a story Peter told me. So Peter, textures in games. When you were looking to get a certain look, and you were talking to me about like this journey of going to the bookshop, a local bookshop, and scouring through all the various ones to choose on. So I think that would be quite interesting just to explore.
Okay, yeah, I guess one of the things about the 20th anniversary thing is you think back to computers and the internet at that point, and most people didn't have the internet, and if they did, it was with a dial-up phone connection. And for us to get reference, we basically went to library in Derby, and on Sadlergate there was an independent bargain bookshop, and I'd say to Heather and Neil, I said, "Oh, have you seen that book they've got on? I've got this one on wolves, and I've got this one called Desert," and it was only £3.99. And we go through. I mean, it's not. I mean, this sort of thing's incredibly frowned upon in terms of the legal side of games and rights and things like that. And I've had a lot of training since then, but
he knows better.
But things gradually changed, and we started to use the internet. But even then, there was no Google image search, so finding imagery in search terms were just not as good as they are now. I think it was around about Tomb Raider 3 where we suddenly went, digital cameras, this is amazing. You can go out and take photos of things, and that's where we we started to reference the world around us, or go for trips and look for things. And I remember going to Power Sports in Derby, which was closed several years ago, and we got out because we knew someone who worked there, managed to get out loads of kind of winter gear and photograph it all, and it all ended up as part of the reference to the costumes in the intro for Tomb Raider 3. And that was just like a gradual transition, and probably within about 5 years, say 15 years ago, that workflow of using the internet and using digital cameras had just become normal to us. But the beginnings were very humble.
How are we doing for time? Cool. And so
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're just going to open it up. Bear with me, because I do have a poorly foot, so I'm going to try and run around to as many of you as possible, and if Luke can help out as well. Would like any questions for any of the core team or anybody that's spoken here tonight. Well, what I want you to do is also, before you ask the question, also say why you're here. If it's a fan, or whether you're kind of a student of the games industry, or I know there's some relatives and some friends of the speakers, just let us know why you're here before you ask a question. But I'm just going to start it off. And it was interesting earlier, and it's been fantastic listening to you all throughout the day. But one thing that was said that I found really interesting, it was never really explained, and that was that the current Lara, especially the look of the current Lara, isn't Lara. Now, what I know it probably wasn't you guys who said it, but what do you think was meant by that, and why do you think kind of the crystal dynamics, the current rise of the Tomb Raider Lara is not Lara? Who's got the mic?
Can I have a go? I'd say that the characters involved, a little bit like what Leavon said, it's a lot to do with the technology, and then also to do with the appetite for how characters are probably represented in games now. So she's a little bit more photorealistic, but designed to be a bit more believable. So her clothes are always dirty, and she's got a few scratches and cuts and things like that. Whereas I think when Tomb Raider started, and certainly the early core design games, she very much lived in a cartoon world, and I think the games now are very much in a real world, and I think it's possibly a difference in how games are perceived, and you'd call that now a core gamers game, whereas I think maybe the original Tomb Raider games were probably a little bit more inclusive, so they had a broader demographic who would play them. Well, that's my perspective.
I think I could add to that, say these games back then required a lot more suspension of disbelief, largely because of the technology, but I think that's something that appealed to me back then. You could, from a very simple construct, you had something that could take you into this kind of imaginary world, whereas now the imaginary world is, rendered in incredible high detail, everything like that. So I think as the requirement for suspension of disbelief has lessened, the characters are going to change and become more rounded and more natural with it. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. From my perspective, I don't think it is, because I play games a lot less. Other people might disagree, but yeah, that's what I think.
Cool. Should we go to a question?
Yeah, hi, is it on? Yeah. Alright, so you said to say why I was here. Well, I've not really played Tomb Raider, but my uncle did, so I sort of grew up from a very young age with Tomb Raider in my life, so I thought I'd come down and have a listen to this Q&A. My question is, as the original, sort of, this lady on the far right, as the original...
Heather.
Who said that?
Judith. Judith or Heather?
The two of them, because there's original guys here from the original kind of series. How do you feel quite protected? It's an open question to the guys, really, who worked on the original Tomb Raiders. Now that we're into 2016 and we're into pretty high-end consoles and completely different Tomb Raiders than what was original Tomb Raider, do you feel quite protective over your original Tomb Raider?
No. Well, certainly I don't feel protective. I think things are going to move on, and I'm just pleased that they're using Tomb Raider, still creating Tomb Raider games, updating Lara, updating her story. It would have been sad if by the time Tomb Raider 3 was completed, that was it. It would have just been a distant memory, but at least now we've got something of a legend to say that we were part of, and that's wonderful. I just hope it continues.
I think for me it was just like what Heather was saying, it was great to be a part of something like that, but by the end of the 4th game, and a bit like what Alex was saying earlier about the fatigue of turning these things around in a repetitive, I'm not going to have a summer holiday every year, that then you felt like I want to, we're creative people, and you think I want to have a challenge to do something different, and what I found is a little bit like, say, Crystal's journey making the game now. I've worked on games where it's had a Disney character or other things like that, and I feel like it's great just to have a go at something else every now and again, and you take on someone else's work, and I think that's kind of quite a healthy thing, and it's really nice to. I went to a games expo in Birmingham last year, and I saw this giant, kind of 30-foot high poster for Rise of the Tomb Raider, and I thought, wow, that's great that that's still going and someone's doing it, and it's still a big event, and it's nice to know that I could still have a summer holiday. So.
It's like Pete said, you move on. You finish it, you move on, and change is always good, especially when you've been doing it for as long as we have. So it's always nice to work on new things. But again, you see the games, you see them around, and it's also good to see they're still going. I mean, the last one I played, and I haven't played one for years, was the mobile one, Tomb Raider Go. And I was like, wow, this is pretty neat. I can just pick it up, play it, move around. It's not like the kind of huge epics which require the big investment of time, staying up till 6 in the morning and things like that. I thought that was pretty good. It's nice to see that it's still going, but I think I've moved on. I think most other people have as well.
Yeah, I haven't got much to add to that. I mean, I was protective at the time. I felt protective about the character at the time and things like that, but once we'd moved on, So, there we go.
Any other questions? Yeah, so we've got one on that side and then one here.
Hi, I'm here as a fan, really. I've got every single one. I was just wondering how much influence you had, or how much input you had regarding the music for the game, which was a huge part when I started playing it, because it terrified me when I was 10, which was when it first came out. So I just wondered how much influence you had on that side of it.
We didn't. None of the people on this stage. That was Nathan McRae and Martin Iveson and Pete Connolly. They were the musicians, and they pretty much, composed it for themselves. Yeah. So they used to come down to us. They'd look at the levels that were being made by Heather and Neil, and the situations, and they'd suddenly come down and go, "Look, I've got this bit. And this is where it's." And they'd tell us where they wanted it triggered in the level and what was going to happen. Oh, we've got this bit of music we composed. And we saw Nathan talking a couple of weeks ago at the Manchester thing. He was pointing out, which I didn't realise at the time, that Tomb Raider 1 had a very small amount of music in it actually, and they were all a couple of minutes long, whereas Tomb Raider 2 you composed much longer pieces, and they were far, and he had lots of different ones for just particular situations, because he had the chance to do that. But very much it was his thing, and the musicians did their bit of the job, and we just went, oh yeah, okay, trigger it here then, there we go.
To add to what Gav said, creatively we had pretty much zero input other than saying, I like the sound of that. But the only thing that we did was programs anyways put constraints on what the musicians could do. You can't have that much memory, you can't do this, you can't do this, which it's not a particularly creative role, but I guess it kind of, the constraints it put on them made them, they produced very, very good work under some pretty tight constraints. So you could say that was any kind of creative input, that's what we did. But that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah, so one of the amazing things about when those games are being made, and it's not something I've experienced with every game I've worked on, is the music was always exceptionally good immediately. Like there wasn't really a lot of iteration. Like whenever you heard something in the game, you were just like, that's amazing, and it sounds so authentic, or it added, so much weight to the game. And certainly with the cinematic stuff that I was doing with Nathan, I felt like he finished off my work for me, where sometimes I'd think, oh, maybe this animation's not that good here, and then you do the music and I'd go, wow, that suddenly made that better, thank you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I definitely agree with Peter. Being the level designer, yeah, we talk to the musicians and we'd show them a room, and they'd instantly get a sensation of whether it should be dark, moody music or whether it should be icy and cold, and let them take it from there and let them run with it. But I know exactly what you're saying, because it'd be the moments that you put a piece of music into your level or a certain sound effect, for instance, that it was the final touch, that it brought the level to life. It wasn't a silent movie anymore. It had more strength to it, and certainly more emotion to the levels. And there's some sets that I walked into that were just a piece of architecture until there was some atmosphere created there with that extra touch of the music. Good question, really.
Judith, just to add to that, Judith, because I see you trying to get rid of the mic. Did you have any of the music to go by, sort of to get you to understand what was going on in the scene, or were you just left to your own devices to say the lines?
No, I didn't really have. All I had was pages of the script. I didn't have like, this is what's going to happen now. But Nathan actually used to say to me, this is what's going to happen now, and it's going to be la 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 or whatever sort of thing. But no, I didn't. So basically, I just had the script and just a general sort of, well, this is what she's going to do now, and this is what's going to happen now. But I did work quite closely with Nathan sometimes, because I'd go in and I'd say, well, let me listen to it, you know, on my own time, sort of thing. And yeah, so I did get a little bit of a peek, but obviously not a say at all.
We have another question.
Hey guys, just massive fan here as well. I'm actually from Italy, so I played them all in Italian up to 5, so Lara sounded very different to me. But yeah, I have an Angel of Darkness question. Obviously, when things didn't quite go as planned, was it like a fight to still kind of like keep Tomb Raider, or did it just kind of like fizzle out?
I think we knew when Angel of Darkness was finished that pretty much core as a company that Tomb Raider was done. There'd been a few other things going on in the background, I can't really say too much, but we knew that we were under enormous amounts of pressure from multiple directions to get it done. And it was, yeah, we finished it, and we pretty much knew we wouldn't be doing another Tomb Raider game, which is a real shame. And I think with Angel of Darkness, there was a real sense that it was a long time ago, so thinking back, but I remember it was always kind of like, it's going to be another couple of months, it's been delayed again, it's another couple of months. And I think that constant drip, drip, drip of small delays did the game a lot of harm. I think if they turned around and said, right, yeah, it's not where it wants to be, we're going to be 8 months and then we're there, I think giving it a bit more breathing space, we could have done a lot more with it. And I think the big problem with it is it wasn't finished. We released it and it was incomplete, which was really frustrating for the amount of work that went into it, because the bits that were complete looked really good. And I think just going back to the audio question, one of the things that you get when you're working on a game like that is when something like the audio comes in, or when you see the completed graphics or completed dressing for a level, you get a real sort of, well, that looks really good, or yeah, I like that looks really nice, that sounds really good, and it feels it comes together. And we had a lot of that with Angel of Darkness. You know, there was some of the levels when they were put together, when they finished. I think the nightclub one was a particular one that I really liked the look of. I thought, God, that looks really, really good. So there was a lot of Angel of Darkness that we were really pleased with. It's just that, yeah, it went a bit wrong at the end. It wasn't finished, and I think we pretty much knew that it was done, and I don't think anybody really had any fight left in them at the end to kind of say, no, we want to carry on doing Tomb Raider. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Cool, any other questions? I just see a hand up at the back, right at the back there.
Cool, I'll get to you next.
Who did the other clothes for Lara Croft?
Who did the other outfits for Lara Croft? As in, I assume like designed it or did the drawings. Who designed?
Who are you, by the way? What capacity are you here? Are you a fan?
Peter's son.
Or is it Peter's son? Hello, Nathan. Well, I'm glad you've asked. So I think in the original game, Lara just had a costume, and I think it was only when we got to Tomb Raider 2, I think as I remember it, we started to think of a context of how she could change. I seem to remember it in, sometimes it was more like a situation led to it. So I think in Tomb Raider 2, she stole a boat plane, and there happened to be a flying jacket, which was really handy because she crashed it in Tibet and it was snowing. So it was the beginning of her having some more functional wardrobe, I think. And then I guess that was part of how it started, as we thought about what would make sense, but it was kind of like a group decision. I think there was only one time where we had something forced upon us, which was, I think Jeremy knew someone who ran solar wetsuits and said it would be a really good idea if Lara wore a solar wetsuit in Tomb Raider 2 when she climbs out of the water, and that was it. But I think otherwise it was more led from the overall story and the level design that we said what makes sense in this location.
Thank you. And here we have another question.
Hi, I'm here as a fan, but also someone who's in the games industry locally. I run social media for Rare down in Twycross.
Rare.
Oh, yeah.
Down there.
Yeah. So as a gamer and a woman in the industry, I just it was partly a thank you for creating such an iconic female character. And I was just wondering if any of you share my frustration that there aren't more game series with strong female characters.
I worked at Rare for 5 or 6 years before I went up to Core.
Oh yeah, which games did you work on?
Battle Battletoads series.
Okay.
Bit of Donkey Kongs.
I'll tell some of the old crowds you say hi then.
There's still some there, they haven't all left yet.
Paul Makichek and Hugh Ward are still there.
Oh dear God. I worked with Paul actually on quite a few of his earlier games. I'll say no more. No, do give them my regards. But actually, Rare's a good contrast. If we're not talking so much about female characters, can I just get you back to how things work in the industry? Because as you've picked up on a good point, I know when Gav said that he came to Core, he experienced a really friendly, open environment when he arrived, and that was one of the reasons that he took the job there. Now, when I left Rare to come to Core, I found them two very, very different environments, and to be perfectly honest, I don't think that Lara would have ever been developed at Rare, and that's no disrespect for Rare at all. It's just that within the country at the time, a lot of development houses had a very fixed idea of who a game's character should be, or a hero should be. And they believed, and I'm sure they used some sort of market appraisal to find these figures, that men just wouldn't want to play a female character. And that was it. And there was no question, no diversity. Keep to what they knew worked, keep everything safe. And what was refreshing about Core was the fact that they did take the risks and were open to ideas about having a female character. So I don't think it's so much as why isn't there more girls in the industry, or why isn't there more female characters in the industry. I think it's more about when you're creating a game, there's a lot of money invested into it, and a lot of people don't want to take risks on something that isn't the norm sometimes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, there's one there. Then I'll come down to the front.
Hi, another international person. I'm here because 20 years ago my son would, when we were living in Sydney, would always come up to me and say, Tumala, Tumala, which meant that he wanted to sit on my lap and while I played Tomb Raider. It was Tomb Raider 2 at the time. He's now up in Carlisle doing graphic design, not computer games, just graphic design. Maybe Tumala had some effect on him. There are amazing things that I really like about the game, not just the gameplay and that sort of stuff. The sound is fantastic, but not so much that you guys worked on that. My question is about the cutscenes, which were impressive for their time. did any of you work? How were the cutscenes in between the gameplay? How were they manufactured? Do you know?
My job. Yeah, so basically that was my job. I guess Toby's vision was always it was going to be a very cinematic game, and what he did that really helped was he storyboarded a lot of it, and then eventually that kind of got passed on to me. We then hired a scriptwriter, Vicky, who helped us to kind of really flesh out what we're doing with the story. But from storyboard, we followed very much a traditional, I guess, film production pipeline. I'd had some training in video production before I came to the company, and I think that was part of the reason they hired me. Was they didn't tell me at the time was, by the way, we think you know about this, so you're going to do it. And I thought, well, I better convince them I do know how to do this, so I'll do all the things that I've heard people talking about, and then I'll do those things. So it would be things like I would take a drawn storyboard and produce what's called an animatic, where you cut that together in timing, and you might have a voice track to go with that. So I'd work with the musicians, so we'd have voices, from depending on which game. So some of that would be Judith's work, and we would be like, right, now we have our timing track for what's being said when, and then we'd use commercial 3D software, and we spent a lot of time making things. Lighting it, animating it, and then quite often blowing it up. But there was always a time pressure, and we had to just learn how to just try and do things efficiently and quickly. And I think I was talking to someone today where in one of the sequences I started to do a thing where sometimes the person talking might be off camera and you would show the person's reaction because it was quicker to animate than to animate the person talking. And I think we, gradually over time we just worked out what is the most Tomb Raider moment we could do, and put all the effort into the really dramatic bit, and less so into the more, mundane things. But it was a learning curve, and hopefully by sort of Tomb Raider 4, the quality had sort of really stepped up. But I think at that point, we realised that with just a few people doing it, it was too much work, and we basically paid a company in Paris called Ex Machina to do the work. And I think suddenly that raised a lot of eyebrows as to how expensive that work was, that we'd managed to sort of muddle through for so many years just by being creative about what work we did to try and get a high quality.
Hi, my name's Elise. I'm from Chicago, and my dad bought this game called Tomb Raider when I was 9, and I'm here this long time later. Yeah, I live here now, which is awesome. And I wanted to ask, in Tomb Raider 1, near the end of the game, there's these levels that I can only describe as kind of muscly and meaty, and they're so awesome. I was just wondering how you got the inspiration to make those.
Yeah, so my wife up there works as a pathologist, and she has all these books full of anatomy and bits of body and things, and I took one of them into work because these guys were struggling to think what they were going to do for that level, and they mentioned this idea of it having a bit of a look. And so as Pete was saying earlier, when it was about they used to scan pictures out of this book of anatomy and then stuck them all over the level.
Is there anything added to that?
She wants to say something, you can tell.
No, I don't, honestly. The Gav's just said enough there.
Okay, well, we've come to just the end of our screenings today, so thank you very much again for coming on. I do have one final question. This again goes from kind of being around you guys earlier today, and actually being around Luke's awesome collection that he's put together. Is obviously when Core was closing down and you guys were kind of leaving, you were grabbing hold of memories, I think. What was the biggest kind of memory you grabbed hold of and took with you, whether it was in the boot of your car or just in your head?
I think for me, despite my slightly jaded outlook on the games industry, I've really enjoyed working at Core. I worked with some really, really good guys and women, really creative people, and had a lot of fun working together. I think that's what I'll take away from it. We worked on some really good games, some games that were less good as well, but it was really enjoyable. I learned a lot, and that's pretty much what I took away with me.
Yeah, so for me it was definitely like the friendships and the the working relationships, but yeah, also everything, like Alex was saying, everything that you learn there. For me, the company had been sold and it was rebellion at that time, and there was no nostalgia associated with that. But I did have a pile of drawings from years ago that was safely at home, and I was thinking, I'm glad I kept those sort of things.
And yeah, for me, as I said earlier, it was kind of the mundane, it was the everyday life at core, was just like being, as other people have said, with your family. But there was a moment, it was when we were at the Games Expo, that caught me out. As music often triggers memories, and it was a proper sort of hairs on the back of my neck moment when I heard Nathan's played a little bit of Tomb Raider 2, I think it was, wasn't it, the chandelier music? And although it wasn't a memory, it was more of a feeling, and it transported me there in seconds, and I did get quite emotional, so it caught me out. But yes, I think it was just the general atmosphere of the place. If I walked, it's an odd thing, isn't it, your sense of smell. I was talking to my daughter the other day. So sometimes if you walk into a room, something will trigger a memory. And I still get those flashes at core, but there's so many of them, I couldn't sort of pinpoint one particular magic moment at all.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Even the building itself, there was something about the building as well. It was more like a house, wasn't it? Yeah. And there was, the family, and everybody helped each other. And also I had a family at core, but I also had a family because my brother he worked with you as well, and Martin, he's come here today to support us all. So yeah, if it wasn't him really, I wouldn't have any memories. So thanks again, Martin, and thanks to everybody. Thank you.
I think I've got to say something as well. Yeah, well, mine's the same as them. I think core was a special place because that we had a lot of freedom to create, and that was what was great about it. And we were left to it, and as you move into different companies, I think in some ways that's why Ancient Darkness ran into trouble, because it didn't have that kind of carefully managed thing. But up until that point, we were always just left to our devices to make things, and we enjoyed doing it. So every day was come in, make stuff, and stuff was going out there and being a success. So it felt great.
Well, thank you once again for coming and joining us this evening, and thank you everyone in the audience for coming and being part of this event. We hope you've had a fantastic day if you did come to the event, and also a fantastic evening for this evening. So I'd just like a round of applause to everyone that's taken part, the core designers and people who made Tomb Raider, and also Iain and Leavon for being part of our discussions today. So I'm sure there's a lot of nostalgia running around the room at the moment, and that can also kind of be heightened at the bar. So we'll head down there, and if anyone kind of wants to join us, then please do.